18. That's pretty dim.
Yeah.
Well, I did find out that our last meeting eventually made it up to HD quality video, so I was a little concerned because all I saw was standard def. But I guess the standard def is the stuff that's immediately available, and then it chews on it for a while, and like another day later, the HD showed up. So that was good news. And if you just search for lowbrow, I've been using that tag, or Lowbrow Astronomer, something like that, and those videos should show up. Brian's session was completely captured, and it's about 3 hours long. So, but the first hour is a very interesting tutorial on Photoshop. So, if you're at all doing imaging and maybe using Photoshop or even GIMP, the techniques there I found really useful.
You said the thing we did this week is on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, excellent.
So I'll go back and look at it, and I'll be able to write an article.
Yeah, right now we're simulcasting to YouTube right now, so the live casting people should go.
Yeah, I didn't realize we were doing that. What was it, Monday night?
Yeah, Monday for Brian.
Yeah.
Well, I thought the instructional portion at the beginning, and I might just chop up that video so just the instructional portion is there too. But I thought that was, just as useful as having fun with the stars. So.
You say it's definitely applicable to GIMP also, because unfortunately Photoshop is now subscription only.
Yeah, it's $10 a month.
Yeah. If you're a university faculty, student, staff, they have a site license that you can log into and use. But it's $10 a month, and as far as I could tell, the tools that I have in GIMP were all there. So I got to try that this weekend. It was one of my things to do, but I haven't had any.
Unfortunately, I'm no longer university staff.
Yeah, I think if you're not, it's still the $10 a month, which is, it's not great, but it's something.
I mean, they don't even give you an option anymore. They used to.
If you could find, I think on places like eBay, you might be able to find a copy of Creative Suite 6. That was the last one they put out.
That was non-subscription?
Yeah, that would be something you'd load and you'd have it forever.
Okay. I may look at that, but GIMP is free, as I understand.
Yeah, it is. A lot of people like it.
Okay.
If you already know how to use it, no one would want to relearn a new one if you already knew GIMP.
Haven't played with it yet, but I'm guessing it's not harder than Photoshop, is it?
No.
I only know the GIMP. I've never played with Photoshop, and I don't want to start. I would rather just continue with GIMP and learn things in the GIMP format.
But you like GIMP, Joy?
Yeah, that's the only one I know, so I don't really have anything to compare it to.
Okay, but I mean, you haven't come into any real...
No.
Cool, thank you.
Well, Brian spent a lot of time in the curves tool in Photoshop, and frankly, I do the same thing on GIMP, and I didn't find very many differences. There are some subtleties for when he was doing eyedroppers that I don't know if they work or not, and that's what I was going to try out, but I suspect that they do, because it seemed pretty important feature to have. But it's good to know that Joy does that. So.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, how's it going, Jim?
Pretty good.
That would be our July speaker right there.
You're month early, but no problem.
Yeah.
And our current speaker's hiding up there in the corner, I see. Or at least the corner on my screen. How's it going, David?
It's fine.
Cool.
Yeah, we have 30 people online right now, and nobody's at the YouTube live, so they're all zooming.
My prediction is we'll get at least 6 more before I start in 5 minutes. That's my bet. Oh, see, now we're down
31.
Only 5 more.
And I'm prepared to do minutes today.
Thank you very much.
Matter of fact, they're already half done. Just put
Well,
it
the problem is, Joy has left such a hard act to follow that anybody doing minutes after her is going to look bad, you know?
I'm not going to brag. I already got one organization I'm doing minutes for, so.
That's true.
Next trick is to hand in the minutes before the meeting starts.
Yeah.
Hey, Charlie,
Yeah.
Norbert here. I've been pointing out to people that they better get out there and check out Venus and that ultra thin crescent that it's showing in the next few days, because it's going to disappear quick, and it won't be so well placed until 2028.
Yeah, you're right. We're just barely past new moon, aren't we?
I saw it Tuesday night. It was very, very nice. I was surprised at how thin it was.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how bright it can be for such a thin crescent.
So anyone tried chasing that newly discovered planetary and Taurus? What those two amateurs found?
I mean, shape?
I'll check out the note.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just saw that article about 20 minutes ago, so no, I didn't.
I might have guessed too low. We're up to 35 now. I was predicting 36 before I start.
So has anybody seen Comet Swan?
Nope.
We haven't. When we were doing the thing with Brian, we looked at what did we look at? We looked at the pieces of Atlas
And pan stars.
and pan stars.
Okay.
Ooh. Is that the comet going breaking up?
Yeah, Atlas actually shows up in Sky Safari with 4 different, like there's an A, B, C, and D fragment. And we saw, I think we saw all of them. I noticed the main fragment with a bit of a tail on it.
Cool.
Oh, there's my 36.
Okay, but 3 minutes to spare.
Yeah. Got a ways to go, though, to hit that 50 plus from last time.
People are still probably caught in traffic.
Yeah, probably looking for a place to park.
Right.
Well, at least they won't get a parking ticket, so that's good.
Well, no, that would be funny. We should send somebody out to certain houses and have them knock on the door with a parking ticket. Just say, think you could get away with it with a Zoom meeting, eh?
My luck, I'll probably catch the computer version of the COVID.
Yeah.
That would mean it would suddenly, it looks fine, degrades, and then just suddenly everything crashes.
Yeah.
That's either your version of COVID, or you just don't have enough memory.
Could be a Windows virus. That would sound good.
Well, I sometimes think I don't have enough memory.
I often have enough memory.
I don't have enough physical or human memory, but I did that on purpose.
Yeah, that's what I meant was organic
memory. Organic memory. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm running out of organic memory as we speak.
Yeah, I think a little more leaks out every year. What was that, Doug?
We need an organic USB.
I think they call those things books, Doug.
Yeah, you ever try getting an organic book to plug into your drive or into your head?
Well, it's all wireless. You read it.
Mm-hmm.
We were wireless before we invented it.
Reading an excellent book by Willie Lee. Basically, it's a history of rocketry to like the early 60s. It's like 500 pages long, and he doesn't even get to Tsiolkovsky until page 100. It's very, very thorough.
Wow.
Fast radio burst.
What was that?
Flare.
Yeah. Oh, solar flare. There you go.
Don't know.
Okay. I'm showing we just hit 7:35. We've been stable at 36 participants. So I think this is a good time to get started. So welcome everybody. You found yourself in the University Lowbrow's second consecutive Zoom meeting. I have sent out a notice about it, but as you know, we're going to be doing this next month in June as well as July, and who knows beyond that. I wouldn't be surprised if we have to continue with remote past that, but we'll see how it goes. So we may have officer reports only if people have anything significant to report afterwards. But as usual, we'll get to our guest speaker first. And our guest speaker is a return of Professor David Cinabro, who actually spoke to us back in 2013, as it turns out. David is a professor and researcher at Wayne State University. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Physics from the University of Chicago and his Master's and PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. David started as research associate at Harvard in 1991 and joined our neighbors at Wayne State in 1995 as assistant professor. In 2006, he became full professor, and since his last presentation to us in August of 2013, he has become the chair of the astronomy department at Wayne State University. But he's not sitting still, as you'll see in a second. Oh, he's also been heavily involved in Bell 2, which is a special high-energy particle accelerator located in Japan. And David is now preparing for a move because he's taken a job with the U.S. Department of Energy. Congratulations, David. In fact, there was even the possibility that we wouldn't have him for the meeting tonight, was depending on when he had to leave. But as you can see, he made it, so that was very nice. Much of David's research has been about particle physics, and he has made presentations about this in cosmology across our nation, as well as internationally. One of his interests is one of our favorite things, core collapse supernova. Tonight, we're honored to have David with us again, this time to talk about the Zowada Observatory, which is a robotic observatory using a 20-inch plane wave telescope, and it's located in the high desert of New Mexico. So with that, let's welcome Professor David Cinabro. It's all yours, David.
Thanks, but I can't share my screen.
Uh-oh.
Whoever the host needs to let me share my screen.
I thought I let everybody do it.
All right, let's see if we can arrange
Sorry
for
about
that
that.
more. Allow record, remove, report. None of that looks like we can do that.
Hang on.
You can
Jeff.
make me,
Yeah, I know. I'm
the
looking.
Made him a
host?
co-host, yeah.
I
Yeah,
did.
make you a co-host. Jeff, make David Cinabro a co-host, please.
Oh, I thought I did.
So just to say, I'm supposed to start at the Department of Energy Monday. They still haven't sent me paperwork. The government really works well.
There, try that
Yeah.
now.
All right. You got your share screen now?
Yes. Perfect.
All right.
Good.
And I'm going back on mute and
All right, you guys see that?
go.
Does that look good, guys? What are you seeing?
I see you.
We do not see it.
Right now I don't see it. I'm making sure I don't.
One more button to press.
There we
There
go.
we go.
Okay, what do you got?
see
You
it.
got
Well,
the...
you got your presentation.
Intro
Okay,
screen.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So thank you all. I'm here to talk about our Dan Zowada Memorial Observatory. This is a lot of my work and Professor Cackett's work, who's spoken to you guys before. Always Very strange behavior. Okay, so this is the Prece. It was donated to Wayne State by Russ Carroll, who was a Detroit area native. It was built in memory of his childhood friend and fellow amateur astronomer Dan Zowada. Dan died at a young age, and Russ wanted to do something to honor his memory. It's a fully robotic telescope, remotely operated with about a half-meter mirror, and it's near a place called Rodeo, New Mexico. The gift came with the observatory and land. It's about 40 acres, and money to cover the operating costs and maintenance for 10 years. We look at this as a fantastic new facility for teaching, research, and outreach. I'm going to mainly talk about the first two things today. Our ideas and outreach are still forming and still in progress. If you don't know where Rodeo is, here's a map of New Mexico and Arizona. You can see it's basically the southeast corner of Arizona or southwest corner of New Mexico, about midway between Tucson and El Paso. There's a little close-up view. I-10 is running across the top there. The interstate that runs across the bottom part of the country. And then you have to go about 40 miles south to get to Rodeo, essentially at the Arizona-New Mexico border. Here's the Google Earth image of the telescope. You can see it is really the midst of nowhere. There's really not much there. Here's some, and this is the bright skies shot. Where's my pointer? Ugh. My pointer doesn't want to seem to show up on the presentation. Well, the thing over to the left, the upper left, that's Phoenix. If you follow down to the south and east, that's Tucson. The other blob on the other side is El Paso. And you can see the crosshairs is where Rodeo is. It's very dark there, and you'll get some pictures of that in a second. Portal, Arizona is nearby, and this is the Portal store, cafe, and lodge. This is actually fairly famous because the mountains that are right near the telescope are a famous birder location. It's a sky forest amidst the desert, and so a lot of migratory birds stop here on their way. So you get a lot of birders coming to the Portal store, cafe, and lodge. My brother, who lives in Phoenix, is actually familiar with the area. His former in-laws used to go hunting deer in the mountains near there. This is downtown Rodeo. It's a real rockin' and swingin' place. That's about it. Here's the road from Rodeo out to the telescope. And these are views from the telescope. Looking north, you're looking up the San Simon Valley. I-10 is about 40 miles away. To the east are the Palancillos Mountains. To the south there's a fairly famous place called Whitmire Canyon, and it's about 40 miles to Mexico from where we are. I have to say, when I was there, mostly I saw Border Patrol agents. Other people that I saw were mostly Border Patrol agents. And this is to the west. This is sky forest, the Chiricahuas, which are quite lovely, really nice. Here, the three of us, myself, Russ Carroll, and Professor Cackett, standing in front of the telescope. This was about 1.5 years ago when we installed the new camera. The camera that Russ gave us wasn't up to snuff, and Wayne State bought and installed a new camera on this. I'll get to that in a couple of slides. Just a pretty view I took when I was there of the telescope at sunset. You might get the point that it's going to get really dark there, and it does get really dark. This is a picture a professional took at the event where Russ gifted the telescope to Wayne State. And yeah, that's not a lie. You can see the Milky Way easily at this location. It is, in fact, the Milky Way is like the brightest thing you see. It's kind of crazy, different from what we're used to seeing around here. Just some views of the telescope inside of its dome. The dome is kind of cramped. It's not really, made for someone to be looking into the telescope. It's just large enough you can get in there and do maintenance, but it's not really, for viewing by eye. And then it's fully robotic. You can see Russ there is having a good time opening and closing the dome from his laptop next to the telescope. The thing includes a weather station and an all-sky camera. The weather station, it has, you can't open the dome if there's too much wind. You can't open the dome if it's raining. And various other things will keep you from opening the dome, and that's all logged at the weather station. The all-sky camera is something we typically check before opening the dome to make sure, to be sure you have good, clear skies. And that's not a joke picture. Again, the Milky Way is the most prominent thing you see when you look up in the sky out there. Here's the details of the telescope, a plane wave 20-inch, a nice Paramount ME2, a 12.5-foot Astrohaven robotic dome. The camera is an FLI Proline, 20 by 48 by 20 by 48, 15 micron pixels. This gives a plate scale of about 0.9 seconds, arc seconds per pixel. There's the details of the all-sky camera, the rain sensor, and the weather station. We have this attached to an advanced local area network for secure control. There are 3 PCs running Windows 10 to operate everything. There are multiple low-light cameras for surveillance and observation of the site. There's a 30-amp backup UPS for power failures. We actually have installed a backup propane fire generator, which kicks on if for some reason everything else is dead, and we just have to make sure the dome is closed. It's like the ultimate fail-safe. The whole thing is fully automated using ACP Professional, the SkyX Pro, and Maxim DL6. The observing schedule is all done by web-based interfaces, and the observatory automatically uploads any taken images to a Google Drive, which is shared with the observers. And then we back up, at the end of the season, we take everything on the Google Drive and back it up at Wayne State. So we formally took possession of the observatory on 23 March 2018. That was about 6 months after Russ called me and I said, I'd love to have a robotic observatory that you'd like to donate. He tried to donate it to other august institutions who I will not name, who told him to go away. He's as I said, he's donated operation funds, and Wayne State has committed to operate the observatory for 10 years. That covers regular bills, power, internet, taxes. I'll point out the tax bill is a whopping $40 a year for 40 acres of land. It's really great. It's total useless land, I'll point out. Local intervention is required a few times per year, and Russ, one of Russ's friends lives in the area, and he's on retainer for us and shows up when local intervention is needed. The observatory typically shuts down during the southwest monsoon season, roughly 1 June to 31 August, mainly for safety reasons. The monsoons come up very quickly, and there's a lot of lightning, and in early stages of this, the observatory was hit by a lightning strike while it was active, and it did a lot of damage, so that had to be fixed. So we learned that lesson, and so mostly this thing shuts down in the summer months. We had to, the original gift came with a 5-slot filter wheel, which had RGB, HL, and illuminance filters. This was fine for astrophotography, but not ideal for research. And I'll show this, I'll demonstrate this a little later. the RGB filters are wide and they have sloped edges. You can see the plot of the filter response there. As you can see, they sort of overlap. So that it's hard to do. It's hard to build a spectra out of these, as opposed to research grade filters. This is the Sloan set of filters, UGRIZ, where they're much more. They're narrower and they're vertical, and so they don't overlap, and so you can actually build a sort of spectra from what you see in UGRIZ filters. We now have a 10-slot filter wheel, which has these research UGRIZ filters, the astrophotography RGB filters, NH alpha, and illuminance. The average seeing at the site is about 2.5 arc seconds. The original camera pixel was 1.4 arc seconds, and so the images that it took were undersampled. That is, the fuzziness in the image is dominated by the size of the camera pixels. We'd like to be in the oversampled regime with pixel sizes less than about 8 arc seconds. Our camera, the original camera, was not sensitive in the infrared and the ultraviolet. The camera was also front lit, and it was more sensitive in the red than the blue, just like our eyes. The camera was 10 years old, and in fact, not long after that come out quite nice. These were done, of course, astrophotography RGB filters, the whirlpool, the crab, the horse head, standard things that come out quite nicely with Zowada. There are some others, the ultra favorite Lagoon Nebula, which has all sorts of nebula that you show to your classes and describe, that there's red ones, there's blue ones, and there's black ones. It's great. And then you try to get them to understand why they're red, they're blue, and they're black. Just some more. So some nice, so it takes nice, pretty pictures. It was featured on NASA's Astronomy Picture of the Day, March 26th, 2018. That's one of the world's most visited websites. We took this nice picture of the Coma cluster that they liked a lot. Ed and Russ took pictures of Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster just after it launched. And you can see the animation there running constantly until I stop it. They managed to image the Roadster moving against the field of stars. And that was done on February 9th of 2018. It's 3 days after its launch. That was pretty cool. Okay, student instruction. I've been mainly using it for student instruction. I teach a class called Astronomy 4200 Astronomical Techniques Lab. It's typically taken by junior or senior astronomy majors at Wayne State. The class includes laboratory characterization of cameras. They measure the quantum efficiency, its probability to detect light as a function of wavelength. They characterize filters, transmission probability as a function of color and wavelength. And they measure extinction of interstellar media, and they do that with a fake star viewed through water with a bit of milk in it, which it mocks up very nicely what the interstellar media looks like. We also do observing, and I've been teaching this class for a while, and until 2018, I've used telescopes on the roof of the Wayne State Physics Building. This is probably the most miserable observing site one could possibly imagine. It's in the middle. So first, it's in Southeast Michigan. I don't have to tell you guys that Southeast Michigan is not the most ideal observing site. And then second, it's in the middle of downtown Detroit. So there is an enormous amount of light pollution. In 4 years of classes, given observing conditions, schedules of students, and schedules of professors, we got 2 observing sessions in. And so typically I use canned data for the labs. This was unsatisfying for both the students and myself, and was unrealistic, as most modern astronomy is done on remote instruments. Very few astronomers go to the instruments and take their images themselves. So I'll warn, this is work in progress. I'm still figuring out what works best for students, and I'll just show 3 projects that we have done over the past couple of years. Astrophotography of MESSIER objects, HR diagram of a star cluster, and looking for variable stars. So this is the easiest one, just astrophotography of a MESSIER object. The goal here is to understand why images are stacked and to learn the software to make color images from RGB filter images. The students also learn to schedule observations with Zowada using the web-based interface. I don't tell them what object they're observing, and I ask them to, once they get their picture, to try to tell me what sort of thing this is. Is it a galaxy? Is it a cluster? Some sort of nebula? This was the best student image from this year. The Ring Nebula. That's pretty good for a half-meter telescope of the Ring Nebula. The HR diagram of a star. And I was really happy that the student primarily was able to identify this as a stellar remnant, which was really good. Right? So it was funny. One student said, "Yeah, that's a stellar remnant." Another student made a gallery of all the MESSIER objects, and he said, "Hey, it's the Ring Nebula." I had to give him full points for that because I didn't say, that's not exactly what I had in mind, but he did a good job making the nice gallery. HR diagram of a star cluster. The goal here is to measure the age of a star cluster. The method is to plot the brightness versus color of stars in a cluster. This is a standard technique. This is a Zowada image of M50 cluster taken by the students. You can clearly in this image see that there are red and blue stars, and some are bright and some are dim. And that's exactly what you'd expect to see in a field of stars. You can then form the color across the bottom and the brightness going vertically. And if you've done this right, you end up with a slash going from upper left to lower right across the diagram. This is called the HR diagram, and that slash is the main sequence of stars. It cuts off somewhere from a main sequence you'd make of all the stars in the sky. For a cluster, you get only a part of it, and that tells you how old the cluster is. And then above the main sequence, you get red giants, and you can see that this cluster has a few red giants. This came out really nice. This is exactly what one is hoping for. This is just this image was one that the students also made of a more open cluster. This is M44. It doesn't have as many stars, so it's kind of impressionistic seeing the main sequence slash across this one. But still, I thought the image was so nice that we kept it anyway. Searching for variable stars. Here, the goal is try to find variable stars. The method is you take a sequence of images and look for stars that have more variability than expected from just instrumental and sky effects. And then I cheat by having the students point at a known variable star, right? And so this is after doing about 2 weeks of observations. You get this you can barely kind of see this purple line going across there. That's the line of instrument variability, and things that rise high above that are candidate variables. If you just run the program, it finds those two ones in blue that it thinks might be variables. The actual variable is this brighter star over here that we didn't have enough data for the program to ID it as an actual variable. Still that I was very happy with this. Students were very happy. They can actually pick out the 3 variable candidates, and one of them was really a variable. Here's just the light curve for the real variable. You can see that it shows large variability compared to the instrumental effects, the size of the air bars. Here was one of those not variables, and you can see not as large variability and larger relative error bars. Here are just the raw images of the variable, and you can quite obviously see with your eyes that it's variable, which is really nice. Let me turn to some research activities. This telescope is ideal for what's now called time domain astronomy, which is tracking changes in brightnesses of variable objects, for example, supernova and electromagnetic follow-up of gravitational wave events. Professor Cackett has been doing echo mapping of the mass falling into supermassive black holes over the last, well, I shouldn't have changed this. We've done this for more than a year now. And here's a cartoon showing what we think is happening in these systems, and it's a movie. So I'm going to run the movie and talk while it's running. So this is an accretion disk, and the accretion disk has the feature of jets coming out the top and the bottom, and then something causes light at the bottom of the jet, and if you watch carefully, you'll see that that light is reflected off of the accretion disk, and it starts first as blue light, and then as it moves further away, it becomes redder light. So the expectation is in the kind of the X-ray, you see a signal, and then lagging behind that, you'll see signals first in blue light and then red light. And this, and so let me show, so that's an idea. It's called the lamppost model. Here is Ed's data. He not only used the Zowada telescope, he combined it with a set of two other telescopes around the world, the Liverpool telescope and the, I've forgotten what LCO stands for. I've forgotten. In any case, well, and this is all in the same filter, and you can see this is the G filter, sort of greenish color. And you can see the Zowada gets the most data, right? It most filled in light curve. And two, the Zowada data agrees nicely with the other telescopes. So Zowada proved to be very helpful in doing this measurement. Here's the full thing combined in all the filters that he looked at, plus it's combined with X-ray observations using the Swift X-ray satellite. Right, and you can see the various filters running from X-rays, ultraviolet, big capital U, small u, blue, green, V for visual, R, I, and Z. And if your eyes are sharp, you can kind of see what the lag looking just as you expected. If you try to find that big peak and you try to follow it all the way down, you can see it slopes off to the right in those plots. On the right side is the measurement of the lag itself. The UVW2 is defined as 0, and the others are relative to that one. So you can see the X-rays come in first, and they lead things by about 2 days, and then the others trail behind. There's another nice feature of this is you can see why you want to use the science type filters with the vertical cutoffs and smaller things. You get a much better measure of the lag, while the astrophotometry filters B and V, for example, because of their way they're designed, their sloping sides, everything is fuzzy. So the lag is measured much more fuzzily by non-science filters than it is by science-grade filters. Okay, and then here are just, you put those lags on a plot versus wavelength, and the plots there's two different ways of measuring the lag. The ICCF, Ed tells me, is the standard old way of doing it. Javelin is a new super duper way of doing it, and you can see it generally gets smaller error bars, and the community is currently undergoing savage cannibalistic fighting over which one is better. On the other hand, for those of us who aren't in this community, the two ways of measuring the lag, they agree nicely. They agree with the model, which are models, various models, which are those lines that show that the lag grows as wavelength. This object, which is called Markarian 142, it has the feature that the X-rays lead by way more than the model predicts. The X-rays are about 2 days out ahead, while this model expects it should be more like a fraction of a day. And that's a mystery that no one yet understands. It does tell you that the system size is 2 to 3 light days. That's how big these lags are, and that tells you how big the accreting system is. This and other data measure that Markarian 142 has a central black hole mass of 1.7 million solar masses. And details of the spectra, which is what Ed as kindly is about to get to that next, show that it's accreting material faster than normal physical limits. And the community is arguing about exactly, well, how does that work? And they're trying to figure out how that actually happens. Here is the first publication using Zowada data by Professor Cackett, supermassive black holes with high accretion rates in active galactic nuclei, number 11, accretion disk reverberation mapping of Markarian 142, with Ed as the lead author. Russ Carroll has been given a co-author credit, and one of our students, Jake Miller, is also on this paper. This combines data from all those telescopes, and LCO, and now it's here, Las Cumbres Observatory, was also used in this. I've just forgotten what the other thing is. And it combined data from the SWIFT satellite. This is a really great moment for Zowada, and we're really thrilled. This paper was just accepted for publication last week before last, so we're very happy. I'm doing some. I'm trying to do some absolute photometry with Zowada, and my graduate student Bob Carr produced this plot for an NSF proposal where we do absolute photometry with Zowada and compare it with the Sloan Digital Sky Survey's absolute photometry for these objects. And you can see one excellent agreement between Zowada and the catalog, and two, how deep we can see. We can see 18.5 magnitude. These were done for like 30-second images. We've done further tests for a few minute images, and we get up to 22.5 magnitude is our sort of detection limit. And that's in our best filter, which is like the G and the R. All right, turning to outreach, we can partner with local Detroit schools and libraries and allow kids to design and implement observations. This is not a new idea. Similar programs with robotic telescopes are done elsewhere around the world. Liverpool and Las Cumbres and the Global Telescope Network have big outreach components with schools. We don't plan to reinvent the wheel, and this would be a fantastic resource to connect local Detroit schools with STEM and Wayne State. We already have a public outreach grant entitled Intergalactic Travelers from Detroit to the Stars. This was awarded by the American Physical Societies to connect the Detroit and Hamtramck public libraries with the planetarium, our planetarium that we have, and it allows kids to use the observatory from library computers. We were planning to do this summer. We had everything all set up, and then of course things went a bit sideways. So I don't know when this program will actually get started. Russ and Dan were avid amateur astronomers. We would like to make Zowada Observatory available to amateur astronomers. We're trying to figure out how we might do that, and I'd be welcome to hear suggestions. So I'm going to summarize. The Dan Zowada Memorial Observatory has been donated by Russ Carroll to Wayne State. It's a fantastic new resource for teaching, research, and outreach. It's being used today for student instruction and being used today for research. And we have nascent outreach plans involving the Detroit Public Library systems and hopefully amateur astronomers. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Thank you very much, David. And we're going to let participants chat some questions in. Did you want to read them again, Adrian? You seemed to enjoy that last time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Starting with, we already have a question that says, hi all to everyone. How is security handled for the observatory way out in New Mexico?
So one, it's pretty self-secure because it is the middle of nowhere and it's the desert, right? And as I said, mostly this is really one of the emptiest parts of the border. that isn't in Texas, right? And so there are a lot of border patrol around because, of course, there are other people who would like to use this empty part of the border. And they usually don't want to attract much attention, so they don't bother the observatory much. We have not had any trouble. We've had more trouble with animals than we have with people.
Okay, so right now that's the only question that's been sent to the group chat. I actually have a question, and not sure. I was interested in what you mentioned about trying to get the program in Detroit off and running. And is there a possibility that volunteers, like from our group or other astronomy groups, could volunteer to help facilitate working with the kids and, you know, having to learn how to use the Zowada Observatory to begin with? Is that something that may be a possibility? Because I'm very interested in that.
Yes, please send me an email. I can put you in touch with the person running the program. She would be thrilled to have volunteers.
Yeah, we weren't able to do it this year, but we do Camp Bert Shirley, where we have Detroit kids from the Detroit Public Schools out at a campsite, and we share our telescopes with them. For obvious reasons, we weren't able to do that this year. So I'll send you an email.
Right. Ours is, you know, library based at the moment, and for obvious reasons, we aren't able to do that. And so we're trying to figure out what we might do. And so volunteers would be helpful.
We do have more questions rolling in now.
Yes, so just as I was asking mine, Doug is sending a question about how often does maintenance need to visit?
So typically a couple times during the observing season, and it's typically some power event has happened, and the telescope just needs someone to reset it by hand. That's typically what the maintenance is, and that usually only happens 1 or 2 times per observing season.
Okay, so we have Jim Forrester, who's asking about infrastructure. It says infrastructure, water, power, internet. So
I'm rolling back to some of the pictures. So you can see it all pretty much right in that picture. There's a water spigot there. There's power that powers the lights out there. You know, Russ built all this and paid for all, you know, to build this out here. And so, yeah, it's fully, we have all we need. The internet is satellite based, and part of the Russ's gift pays for the satellite connection for us to, those computers to be connected via satellite connection.
All right.
So all your power is from your own generator then?
No, the power, we're running off of grid power most of the time.
Oh, okay.
That pole right there, I can see it.
Yeah, I wondered, I see a pole there.
Yeah, I guess it's on. So they're on the grid, even though it looks like they're nowhere near one.
We have a generator. Well, it's you know, Rodeo is a town, you know, right off of a main-ish road. And it's only, so this thing is about 2 or 3 miles from Rodeo. So the line had to be run, you know, about 2 or 3 miles.
All right, so I'm going to say what Brian Close typed in. Maybe the person who asked the question wants to go out there and steal all the equipment. So whoever's looking at the grid screen, look at hi all and wave your finger like this. Kurt and Kathy have.
If I could interject for a minute, I wonder if they noted what appears to be the security camera on the utility pole.
There are security cameras.
There it is.
That would not be the best of ideas, let's just say.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a question, Kurt and Kathy. Are the images recorded as FITS files with all of the attendant metadata?
Yes. We get FITS files out of the observatory. We actually run on board the telescope, on board the observatory, run a pre-processing of these things, and you get nicely prepared FITS images with darks subtracted and biases and flats corrected.
I'll add on a question. Are there any other formats that you're able to pull out of there, or do you just stick with FITs?
We just stick with FITs.
Okay.
I mean, you then get them and you can process them in your own way.
Yep.
We most of us use DS9.
Okay, so Norbert Vance has a good question, straight from EMU, saying, is Jeff Kahn involved with this project?
Unfortunately not. Jeff is retired.
Okay. Jim Shedlowski asks, what altitude are you all in? And is there any connection to the University of Arizona in Tucson?
So I've forgotten the altitude. It is the high desert. We aren't up on top of the mountain ranges. We're in the valley in between. Again, that was for the power considerations and such like that. But there is no connection with the University of Arizona. You can look up rodeos. It's essentially the same altitude as Rodeo, New Mexico.
I'm going to guess 4,000 feet.
Yeah, that's probably about right. I just can't remember. I should put it in the slides.
All right, so we have a question from Barry Wisman. Has a good question here. Does someone have to go out on site to take the darks and flats?
No, it's all automated. We have a totally automated procedure where you just kind of, you tell it you want to calibrate, and the telescope then just does it. It knows exactly what it's doing.
It figures out it can do its own flats, do its own darks.
Well, it knows to take it knows what to do, right? It's been programmed in what the calibration procedure is.
All right, so we have a request from Kurt and Kathy. Kurt probably asking, could I get a FITS file of M1, the Crab Nebula? He did some imaging of it at Kitt Peak a few years ago, but ran into some weird problems processing it. So he's requesting a FITS image of the crab.
Yeah, I'll have to ask. Right. So that nice crab image was done, before we took possession. So Russ or one of his friends did it. So I would have to ask. So if you send me an email, I can ask Russ if it's shareable.
Norb is, I don't see all the people, but I see Norb blocking his, he's tapping on his screen. Okay, so with that request, we have room for more questions. So if anyone has a question, feel free to, now, Charlie, I'm looking at a large screen with the presentation. If you're able to see all of the participants, we could have some speak there. Yeah, we could.
I got it.
We can try having a couple people speak their question. I mean, that's.
They just have to unmute themselves and then ask the question if they like.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for them to fill the screen with all the images, I think David has to go out of screen sharing.
Yeah, I could do that if you want.
Well, we could. If you have to go back in, just go in.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Now I can switch to the gallery view. Although it doesn't. I think you all can also use the zoom feature to put a hand raise up, or as I scroll through the gallery, I can look for hands raised, people going, ooh, I got a question. Those that don't have video, would just use the hand raise or just unmute, because with no one really unmuting themselves, just unmute yourself and ask a question. I don't see chaos and mass confusion happening, so
we may be out of questions.
Yeah, that could be the other.
I have a question.
All right.
Hey, Jim.
Have you ever? This is kind of a new project or a new facility, but you might, or have you considered trying to join the All Arizona MESSIER Marathon that they have every spring in usually late April, early May. It's one of the biggest ones in the world, and they conduct it nowadays. It's about 40, 50 miles west of Phoenix. But it used to be out in the desert, probably not more than 100 miles where you're at.
Right.
It'd be an interesting thing to see an automated MESSIER marathon.
Right. So we've actually considered doing one ourselves, but we have not. Part of it is because we're using a lot of time for research.
Sure.
You know, Ed's gathering. That's Markarian 142 is not the only one he's tracking. He's tracking a bunch of others, and so we'd have to sacrifice a research night or something to do that. We haven't yet thought that was worth it. And I'm familiar, but my brother lives in Phoenix, right? And so I'm familiar with the MESSIER, and it's actually like 4 hours away.
Well, I realize that, but it's
yeah.
one of the few places in the States that you can actually do it. It would be just one night.
No, I get it. And so we've considered doing it, but we haven't considered joining that, which is, you know, like a big party.
Right.
If we were to join it, we'd probably like to go there and show them the telescope doing it. And we just haven't done that.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Barry's
I have
got
a question.
Okay, Barry.
In one of your first slides, sorry for the dog barking in the background. In one of your first slides, you talked about the cameras being front lit versus backlit, and like pixel size versus sort of average seeing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, so you know, every site has an average seeing. You know, how well you see. You know, if you take a point image, so like a star, and ask, you know, well, how big does that actually look? That's what we mean by average seeing. So when I reported that the average seeing at the site that means we've looked at stars and you look at how big they appear to look, and they look about 2.5 arc seconds across, right? So that's what we call the seeing. You'd like to be in the regime where you're sampling at a smaller size than that, so that any object that you see, the fuzziness is dominated by the seeing fuzziness and not the fuzziness of your camera, right? So we wanted a camera that had pixels that are sort of about, you know, half or better the size of the average seeing. And that's what puts you in the oversampled regime, so that, again, the fuzziness is dominated by the seeing, not dominated by your camera.
Right.
So the smaller your pixels, the better you do, right?
And in terms of the front illumination versus the back illumination, how does that affect the sensitivity?
Well, so front illumination, you tend to have, it has to do with how well the light penetrates. And so front illumination will be more efficient in the red than it is in the blue. Now that's kind of perfect for astrophotography, because that's how your eyes work, right? So you're able to make images that look a lot like what your eyes would see. Now, but if you want to try to actually measure like a sort of poor man's spectra, you would rather have flat response across the spectrum and have the same sensitivity as the red is in the blue. And so back illumination does that better than front illumination.
Is that just a statement of the fact that the blue photons have more energy, so they penetrate?
That's essentially the physical reason for that.
You need a thicker sensor to catch more of them, and then it's harder for the charges to get back to where the sensor is.
You've understood why it's hard to build a good camera. And the cameras that are really good are really expensive.
Thanks.
Charlie, may I ask a question?
Go ahead, Norbert.
Okay, first of all, I didn't see Walter White's camper in the background in any of the pictures. That's good. But you mentioned critters are your main problem. How well sealed is that dome? You get what, snakes or scorpions or mice?
So the critter that gives us the most trouble are actually moths. They seem to like the warmth of the computers.
Oh.
And so the other sort of critters, it is pretty well sealed from larger critters, and we just kind of sometimes see them prowling around the site. But we had to do a better sealing to keep moths out, because they actually destroyed one of the computer's motherboards.
Wow. Oh, geez. Interesting. Yeah, I mentioned that only because even at EMU up on top of Scherzer, our observatory, one night I was looking at our monitor camera, and there was a mouse crawling all over the telescope. you'd see it well in the IR.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we always fear that, when it's open, something will crawl in, right? That's yet to happen, but I get it.
Okay.
I just scope at the sun. I'll get rid of the problem.
Sorry.
You suggested aiming the scope at the sun to get rid of the problem.
That would not be a good idea.
Not good.
The dome is interlocked, not to open when it's too bright.
Very nice. The weather station does its job then. You have not had any issues with that, I take it.
No, there's never. We don't have a problem.
And,
Look, it hardly ever rains there except during monsoon season.
Okay. How long does it take to close the dome?
In its sort of emergency mode, it closes in about 10 seconds.
Okay. And your local assistant is 10, 15, 20 minutes out? Or?
That's correct. If you've never been here, that area is like a mecca for amateur astronomers because it is so dark.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of amateur astronomers, and that's what one of Russ's friends is. An amateur astronomer who actually bought an underground bunker and then built a dome on top. And he lives in the bunker and does amateur astronomy with his dome up top.
Very nice. Thank you.
All right. Charlie, do you want to have any more questions?
Yeah, last call if anybody's got any.
Yep, I do have one. Not sure if I asked it from Kurt and Kathy. With the dome interlock, do you take sky flats during twilight, or is there an internal system for flats?
Right. So if you run the calibration procedure, it breaks some of the rules, and it takes an image of the inside of the dome for flats at twilight.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So I think with that, we're going to unmute everybody and allow you all to give applause.
When I asked David about a hat or a shirt, I couldn't remember what we gave him last time. He told me that he really didn't want any kind of gift at all. But I figure at the very minimum, we can at least give him our undying gratitude and our best wishes on his new job.
I will say for my last talk, I still use the mug.
Thanks again, David. So with that, do any officers have anything that they need to report?
I'll do a really quick one. Astronomy at the beach is going to be virtual. We're still working out the details on how we're going to accomplish that. But based on, our ever-changing situation with COVID-19, we didn't think it would be a wise thing to continue to plan a face-to-face astronomy at the beach. So we'll be figuring more about that as we go. It will involve something similar to what we've done with Brian Adam. There will be more information as we go along. So we'll be asking not only our club, but all the other clubs will be looking for input to the, how we can make it successful as a virtual event. So that's, if there's questions about that, feel free to, you can send some emails or, you can catch up with me afterwards. But yeah, we are going to go virtual. And that's it, all that I have for a report, kind of a combination galactic BP report.
If I may interject a question to Adrian about that. I came in late to the party the other night on Brian's tour of the sky. That was very impressive. So I would think that the public would enjoy something like that, especially given the quality of what he was showing. Another side question is how far is Brian set up from the Wayne State one? I'm not really familiar with where he's at.
We asked that question. Jeff, you asked that question.
Yeah, Adrian.
I don't know.
Yeah, Brian's a little south of there. He's at Animus, but he's much more closer to the border than Wayne State is.
Yeah,
he's probably only about 5 miles north of the border.
That was
about 40 miles north of the border.
Yeah, that was my impression from Brian's talk, was that he's very close to the Mexican border, but also to Arizona as well. So Arizona,
so
New
they're
Mexico
probably
border.
close by. And yeah, Norb, we would do things like if we recorded, for instance, we recorded a session like that, because we know Brian has to wait until 2 hours past our dark time in order to do any viewing. But if we recorded it, we could make that presentation available on YouTube and allow folks coming in on a website to simply click it, Star Party, and list some of the things that we go after. So a number of those could be gathered. Talks could be gathered. This talk is being recorded. Jeff's recording it on YouTube. There are a number of things that media that we could make available that aren't live, but are things that people would be interested in. So we're definitely looking at that as a way to fill out content when, there's telescopes are few and far between. And there can be some live events as well. It depends on what the live event is, and, making sure that you have a camera that doesn't shut off every 30 minutes to be able to show the event, like mine does. It's looking like I'm going to have to get a webcam or do some more.
Howard,
but that's the idea.
Yeah, Howard asked, I believe it's Howard, is there a possibility that we may still reverse that position and have a public gathering for AATB in 2020?
I'll answer that
one.
Yeah,
sure. Presidente.
Yeah, so until there's a known, documented, scientifically proven way to understand that, COVID-19 is no longer an issue, that would be something to be considered. But also keep in mind that a lot of the planning that we do for it should have happened by now, and we were all put on hold because of this. So it would be very difficult to pull off if suddenly, the miracle of a cure shows up. And we would have to be able to guarantee the safety of everyone coming to that event. And without any kind of ability to guarantee you won't catch, anything that could kill you within 5 days, it's hard for us to want to do that. So we are watching current events closely, and we're making sure that good information about any cures or vaccines or treatments even, cases, all of that stuff's got to come into play, and it's got to be a safe event. You can't go there, catch a cold, and then end up in the hospital with COVID-19.
Without any actual legal pronouncement from the government, we do set ourselves up, unfortunately. If we hold an event and somebody gets ill, then what do we do?
Yeah,
that's the exact same reason we're not having the open houses, and we've been canceling a month at a time, because we're just not comfortable with the position that that we're in. So we don't want to put the public at risk.
Yeah, that's something I want to talk about.
Yeah.
The open houses.
Right.
When you think about the very nature of what we do at a star party, I can't think of a whole much better way to spread a virus.
Right. Yeah.
Keep in mind that you get around 5,000 people total between the 2 days. 5,000 people have a chance to contract something that is very serious. Brian, I see you've got a hand up.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
Speaking both as an attorney and someone who's isolating because I have an immune disorder, I've been reading articles in the New Yorker and the New York Times, and it only takes one. There's been examples in Singapore and Hong Kong where one person has gone to a hospital and infected a dozen medical people who then infect a dozen more people each. You could just be creating a super spreader event.
Right, and even
One
if
person, just one person who's asymptomatic could create a super spreader event at
right.
we're holding. And it's not even, I'm not even thinking about liability. I'm just thinking, you know, until we have a vaccine, I just don't see how we do anything like that.
Well,
right.
the discussion did come up about possibilities of how something like that worked, but at every avenue that we said, like, well, if we do this and this and this and clean things, they're like, but then, well, what happens if, you know, double the traffic comes through, or do we limit things and we have to turn people away? It's like there were just so many negatives to it, not to mention the health problems. It was like it just wasn't that workable. So
right.
We've got a question from John Walbank.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, we're also constrained by what the Michigan Department of Parks will allow. Right now, they're not allowing much of anything, and it's very doubtful that they would allow a very large gathering like that, even in September. So that's an absolute constraint on our activities.
Yeah. They were not even opening up the park for any kind of event until July 1st.
Right. So we had a board meeting on this yesterday, and if you've got more questions, because I don't want to dominate the meeting with black news, even though it's pretty important, but if you have more questions, you can shoot me an email. I'd be happy to open up a Zoom room, or we'll use one of these Zoom rooms to just discuss any concerns you have about black going virtual, because it's a very recent decision in light of where we still are with COVID-19.
Have you gotten any feedback from the other clubs about this decision?
We haven't yet. This is the first that we've disseminated information, just because they happen to be after our board meeting. Yeah. So
the GLAC
disseminating it to other clubs.
The GLAC board, we've all got a group of 7 clubs that we're going to try to get a hold of between now and the next meeting to try to figure out where they're at and to get reactions from them. I've already contacted a couple on the list today, so we're on it.
Yeah, and I'll end my report there. If there's more questions, shoot me an email, and we can actually, if there's enough emails, we'll cobble together another discussion offline. Or maybe wait until after the rest of the officer report, and then I'll hang out for more questions if people would prefer that. So Charlie.
Any other officer reports?
Yeah, the observer contacted us again about the June open houses. The officers agreed to call them off, but I think we should go ahead and at least call them off through September. The university isn't even sure it's going to be opening up in any sort of traditional way in September, and I just don't see how we can do anything that they're not going to agree to, number one. And number two, as Brian mentioned, it's just not safe out there. And, you know, no matter what certain people think, it's just not safe out there. And so that's my proposal, is that we, you know, call off the open houses at least through September. And then, you know, at the end of the summer, we can see if we want to try and do something. But I just don't see anything changing in the next 3 months.
And there would be some consistency to that decision, Jim, because if we're going to not do AATB, then it would seem strange that we would even think about doing an open house before we get to that time.
Yeah, everything, the Ann Arbor's canceled all of its major events for June and July already.
I think you got a question from Brian, Jim.
So is there technology at Peach Mountain and internet connection at Peach Mountain to let us do a virtual open house, or just they never upgraded that?
No, there's no internet out there. We'd be doing everything over the phone if we did something like that.
I gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
And to make matters worse, it's not a good cell phone area either.
Right. Yeah, it was something I was going to test with you, Jack. I was gonna bring a MiFi out there and see what we could get, but I wouldn't be too hopeful for something, you know, compared to what we see with Doug Bach and Brian Adam, where it's smooth and he's zipping back and forth. So, yeah, that's
yeah, I think if we wanted to do something virtual, doing it with folks that have got observatories equipped with decent bandwidth would be a lot better idea.
Jack Underwood texted me real quick and suggested a virtual planetarium show. Use Sky Safari or Stellarium or something. Do a little program on that.
That sounds good.
But people would be curious to know how all that software works. If they're stuck at home playing with their computers, they might, like to hear from a person.
And
that's
that's not a
well-versed
bad
in such.
idea.
Especially Stellarium, since it's free.
Yes.
Yeah, we could even do Sky Safari. If I break down and use my tablet, which is better for Zoom anyway, and I share my screen, Sky Safari, I can be going through it and basically taking in requests and using that to show people what certain objects look like, or even how the night sky looks like.
I'm sure a lot of those people would be interested, especially with all the high-tech scopes that are out there for backyard use. I was out with my C11 and my iPhone the other night, sky safaring around the sky. It was very, very enjoyable.
I'm going to put my GLAC hat on, Norb. Would you be open to presenting at an online AATBA?
Oh my, look at the time.
Dang.
Try, Jeff.
I got to try when I can, you know?
Star Trek Next Generation's coming out here.
Yeah, we will, don't worry, Norb. We will be hounding you for a presentation or 6 for AATB. But we've got some months, so expect something by tomorrow.
Sounds like a grad student project.
Or we got to start thinking about 2021 speakers. I think we got 3 lined up next year, so we'll be after you now.
Well, since Jack Underwood suggested it, we'll put him to task on it. He's adept at computers.
Anyway, did people ever find out what the issue that was going on with the Sky Safari was? I noticed there was some back and forth about that in the email.
They did resolve it. I think the resolution was a massive list was being downloaded. Once he deleted that list and it let it go through, Sky Safari started to work for him again. So it was a bandwidth issue.
Okay, thanks.
A storage issue.
Any other officers?
Observatory.
Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, pal. Just a quick one. I was out at the observatory Tuesday, and the road ruts are still there. There's been no road work done on that. Did go through the Argo Neva settings just to make sure everything works okay with that. That was all right. And just the general maintenance, the roof, telescope electronics, everything's set up and working all right. So even though it looks like we will not be out at the observatory till September, October, we might, once we reopen the observatory up, maybe we can look at a couple scheduled open dates, maybe through November and December, depending on the weather. Make up for some lost time. But as far as everything on the observatory, things are looking pretty good. So that's all I have to report on.
Hey, Jack?
Yep.
Because we still need to paint the outside of the building. Are the ruts too bad to get a car up there? Because we could have a couple, you know, 2 or at most 3 people up there and not violate distancing rules. But can we even drive up there? It sounds like you were able to.
I'm able to. I got a 4 all-wheel drive. You could probably get up in your vehicle, say a large vehicle can get up there without a problem. The only thing you have to be careful is if you had a small car, some of the ruts, if your tire goes into the rut parallel with the rut, then you probably drag your frame a little bit. Some of those ruts are deep. Once, see, they looked good because they had all the leaves in them. Well, the leaves are gone now, and you can see how deep they really are. So yeah, you could get up with your Traverse car like that. Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of clearance. I don't. If we were to try and get some vehicles up there, it sounds like we'd have to take a few sections of 4x4 and drop them into ruts or something.
No, there is a way of driving on the road towards the right, and you can eliminate just about all the ruts. It's easy to see in the day, but driving up late at night, well, with your headlights, you should be able to see either way.
But anyway, I would think the majority of people that we could ever have up there working on it would only be 2 or 3.
As something like we had before, we had about 4 people, you know, and that wasn't bad. I've looked at it, and we could scrape down, and there is certain types of exterior grade paint for the buildings that are mold free and things like that you can buy that would be good. That's what I was looking at.
Well, there's only going to be a few of us up there, so I'll talk with you later about it when it gets a little warmer and we think it's safer.
Yeah.
So Jack, if I may interject, being that I live on the fringe of Dexter here, I noticed that obviously with the reduced traffic and all that other stuff, we've discussed this, the sky transparency and darkness has been pretty exceptional here. I can imagine it's probably pretty good up there on Beach Mountain right about now. And it's too bad you can't get to the site in any easy form.
Yeah, I would imagine, it's funny you brought that up because I've thought about that because I wanted to make some changes to the programming software on the Argo Navis and go to a different gem alignment because I know that mount is not really aligned to Polaris like it's supposed to be. That's part of our problem. So it'd probably be a 2-star alignment. I was going to talk to some other people about it later and do that instead. And that would help out probably on the alignment. I wanted to test that, but I haven't really had a chance to do it. So yeah, if we had just had a few people up there, 4 or 5, I don't think it'd be a real problem. But it was something we'd have to probably do with the officers and that if we were going to go up there. I don't think we could open that up to the membership and have everybody up there. There'd be some serious problems.
The practical side of it is that unless you're wearing a mask, if you cough or speak loudly, you're going to spray 8 meters, and which is like 26 feet. So I think Doug's idea about, 2 or 3 people at a time is, especially down at the observatory, is about what that space can handle. Some of us have thought about going out to Lake Hudson. There's a lot of space out there, and we can get ourselves appropriately apart. But we still can't share equipment or views or anything of that sort. So whoever wants to use the McMath, they would be the one using the McMath. We couldn't share it even among ourselves.
Agreed.
Well, I'm ready.
Yeah,
Can you imagine 20 people in a row focusing?
Look at my picture.
Yeah, every one
My
of them would
picture
have to
up there.
take a sanitizing wipe and wipe it off with the next person.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been discussions of having a sacrificial eyepiece that's going to get destroyed in the process, probably.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at my picture up there, you'll see the observatory with about 8 or 9 people in it. So get a rough idea of what the distancing looks like.
There isn't any.
Yeah, there isn't any distancing. That's
Right.
Well,
that's social gathering or physical gathering. Yeah, the term is now physical distancing. Social distancing was too depressing for people, so we're going with physical distancing and social ESP or something. I don't know.
Anti-social gathering.
Social light years apart.
Yeah, 6 light years.
Hey, Jack, has anybody ever looked into satellite data services for out at Peach Mountain?
I don't know. We haven't. At one time, I think they did have. I think they had some kind of service there. I could be wrong, but this would have been about 10 years ago.
Oh, would have been longer ago than that. There hasn't been service out there since I've been in the club, and that's, about 20 years.
Yeah.
I live about 3 miles away, and the only internet available is HughesNet.
Oh, okay. Now, I have used my car when I was out there. I've got a Wi-Fi thing for my Traverse, and I was able to connect and use that there. But, I don't know how well it would work for a virtual astronomy event. You'd have to leave the car running all the time and everything else, so it's not really that great of an idea.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
Elon Musk to the rescue. All those satellites out there, we'll just use one of those and bounce off it.
Elon to the rescue.
There you go.
All right. Yeah, the only feasible way to do something out at Peach Mountain, you do have power, so whatever we were using to transmit whatever was being shown would have to have an ability to plug into an additional power strip, and a MiFi or some sort of portable Wi-Fi unit would have to transmit just enough data for whatever it is that we were showing.
Yeah.
Now,
I was
done
just reading
live
off of the
streams.
chat session from Howard. Is it possible to broadcast Wi-Fi, UVM observatory dorm, and maybe the large dishes? 25 megabit download and 3 megabit upload with Hughes, which is expensive, I know, but
Yeah, so you either buy that or you try to run on cell phone power, which is able to stream a Catholic Mass, but I don't know. That's with a one-sided stream. You're only watching. If you want people to chime in and there's more bandwidth, there may be a bit more of a problem. So yeah, at anything, it would be an experiment, and I don't know how successful it would be, but it's something that could be, we could certainly record something being done, and
That's
then,
true.
put it on YouTube and make it something that you view at whenever you would like. So
that's true. Recording is always an
familiar
issue.
with Stuff like DirecTV, do they offer internet service or?
Don't know.
Dish.
Yeah.
I think DirecTV is affiliated with AT&T somehow, and I don't know how they do it, but
Yeah, Jim,
The
it's
last time,
Harry.
I think AT&T owns DirecTV.
yeah.
Correct.
Your information is brought into the house on satellite, but they usually have a data connection for the billing purposes coming out of your receiver.
There was also those dormitories that are up the hill by the other old observatory towers, and I wondered what kind of connectivity they had, because the university obviously hosts those buildings. Because we can satellite dish to satellite dish Wi-Fi for I think 2 or 3 miles is possible.
All right. Yeah.
Just a quick one on that. When I take my laptop out to the observatory, I click on the Wi-Fi, so it searches for a Wi-Fi reception. I've been doing that for the last couple of years when I go out there, and I still have not found any Wi-Fi reception out there yet. You know, I hack or hook into. I was thinking there might be a house or something else around there, but I still have found nothing. It's always blank. So
there's like whatever their natural resources people call themselves these days. Out by the old observatories, they have that custodian's cottage. Does that have service or?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, was that building that, you know, had a couple of bedrooms in it for the guys who were sleeping during the day and observing at night. But I've just seen antennas on Amazon that you can buy that will broadcast Wi-Fi antenna to antenna over a good distance.
Yeah, bear in mind that it would be a great solution as soon as, and we hope coming next year, vaccines and better treatment for those is found, we would be getting ourselves back into allowing observing again. So any solution that gets put in place would be a great solution. We could still use it to, I guess, sporadically to do virtual for sick and shut-in. But I'm thinking our goal would be to get back to good old observing the way that we've been doing it for the last few years, earning the right to be out and about again with COVID-19 managed.
Kurt and Kathy have got a couple of comments. There we go.
Those buildings were really only used in the early and mid 70s. By the time we got out there, they were disused and the scopes were gone. They were used for like shakedown. The 52-inch went to Kit Peak, and the Schmidt went to South America, and really only the radio observatory was the 80-foot was being used. In fact, when we took over in '79, even the 26-foot was pretty much shut down. So
now the reason that we would want an internet connection to the observatory isn't so much for sharing views to the telescope. I think it's more for helping Jack out with his administration of the place. You know, right now he's running out there checking humidities and temperature, and we could, you know, maintain the facility better if we had a Wi-Fi connection where we had cameras looking at the grounds in the observatory. We had telemetry to tell us what the temperature and humidity was in the thing. And it would take a lot of the burden off Jack and give us real-time information of what's going on in the observatory. And I think that's probably why we would want a sustained internet connection.
That's
a
good
that
point.
was the magic bullet, Don, the security cameras, because SNR&E is very worried about security things. So we'll get them to fund it.
Jack?
Yeah, right.
Hey, Jack.
Okay, that might be a stretch.
Hey, Jack, is that pedestal, is that communications pedestal still there at the corner of the building? Because you have to understand, there's phone lines running just less than 100 feet from that building. And, you know, at my age, I can't even remember her name here very often, but there was actually a phone pedestal at the corner of the building there, and I'm guessing there actually could be phone lines that could be made active. Now it's not, you know, you're not going to get a terabyte or you know, or even 4 or 5 megabytes of bandwidth on that, but you could probably get enough. You could probably get
DSL. That is
DSL.
DSL.
You could, but also the DSL depending on how far it is from the server, right?
Sure.
But you could, if that pedestal is still active, you could possibly get a phone line in there, and maybe not send out great live images, but if nothing else, sending out stills.
Okay, any other officer reports?
Well, I just want to be clear, should I be telling the observer when next they call that we're going to be canceling open houses through September or not?
Yeah, I didn't hear any objection when you had mentioned that. And again,
Okay.
since it looks like AATB is toast that way, then it would be
All right.
inconsistent to schedule.
Then the next time I get a shout out from Ella, I'll tell her that we're done until September, until October at the earliest.
Okay.
Plus, aren't we also dictated a bit by when a university allows groups to be on their property?
We are.
We are.
They're not.
Right.
I don't know whether we talked about it in this meeting, but we did talk about it a little before the meeting started. The university doesn't know exactly how they're doing things in the fall yet. And that'll depend on things they don't know, and it'll depend on things that they're scrambling to set up to see if they're going to get set up. Because I think the first things they plan to open up are the research facilities, but classrooms, I don't think they know how they're going to do stuff like that, or student labs.
Well, the current situation is that they're letting the researchers in. The construction projects are going forward. Whoa, am I muted? No. And the summer terms are all online through August, basically. Currently, they're looking at what needs to be done for fall. We know that there aren't going to be any football games going on. That's too many people, and they're kind of, trying to weigh all the options, and maybe some kind of hybrid program for fall classes. Obviously, big lectures are going to be a real problem, but they're really haven't completely decided. They've got task force all over the place. So it might be a hybrid of online versus in person, and we just don't know. But for right now, through August, the facilities on campus are closed.
Okay, so that's clear.
And that's a huge thing, as we know, the revenue that college football brings in. That's not a slight decision.
Yeah, well, this is coming from the president.
Anywhere but the athletic department. So the people that it affects are the people that, that we might actually care about, are the people that maintain those facilities and do the construction work down there. And the athletes, I don't know what's going to happen now. Some of them are going to go into the portal to see if they can find a school that's actually playing, but for the most part, I think they're going to be stuck, and whether there are tuition scholarships will be paid or not, I don't know.
Well, the athletics is very interested in getting their stuff back because it's a revenue loss for them.
Unlike a lot of schools, the U of M athletic department is financially solvent. It's not
where they were.
Occasionally they might draw down on student fees, but I think it's been since I went to school there that they've done that, and that was controversial when they did it. So most, that stadium, that's umpteen $1 million a weekend, and the one game though is about what it costs to pay Harbaugh's salary, and I haven't heard any noise from him about taking a pay cut or foregoing his salary like Some people have, but that's another discussion that doesn't have anything to do with us.
Right.
I may pipe in here if I may. I just stepped out on my patio and I already see Venus out there in the west, and we have a really bright ISS flyover out of the southwest nearly overhead, starting at 10:26 p.m. tonight. So minus 3 point. It's going to pass right past Arcturus. It may even hit it. So keep an eye out for the ISS.
Oh man, is Arcturus going to be okay?
I hope so.
Well, the space station is going to be okay.
Yeah, is the space station going to be okay? Arcturus will make short work of that.
Yeah. Be like Passengers, the movie.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
well,
I actually simulated that.
Get out there and try to enjoy some clear skies. So, does anybody have anything else quick, or can we adjourn?
No, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Anybody opposed? Yep, there you go, Doug. I knew you were drinking on the job.
Well, you could just stay on, Doug.